All right, so previously we did a lesson on the pin tool and all the different things that you can do with the adding anchor points, manipulating anchor points, and all the kind of nuanced things that you can do by making modifications to some of the things using the different options that you have on the pin tool. Now, I also have, as we're going through our little series of what is the toolbar and what does it do, it's a series that I'm lovingly referred to as, what does this button do? We are now looking at the curvature tool, right? Now you will notice that I have this file named curvature tool is for cheaters, all right? Because when I was getting started, we didn't have a curvature tool. And to be perfectly honest with you, I don't use it that much because I'm so used to using the pin tool, all right? And so I can see where, especially when you're getting started out, it would be beneficial to use something like this. The main thing I'll tell you is that it's good to know both, all right? But you need to be able, the curvature tool is not going to give you as much control over what you're trying to do as the pin tool might. And so you can make it do what you want it to do, but it works more in general than it does exactly like the pin tool, all right? So, but we're going to go over here. So this is a picture that I have that's a good example to use on the curvature tool. I do not own the rights to this picture. Please do not sue me. So we were talking about the pin tool earlier. This is the pin tool. So right next to it is the curvature tool, right? Because we got very creative in the design for this button, all right? So the curvature tool. Here's how the curvature tool works. I'm going to hide my artboard. If you don't know how to hide your artboard, it's Control-Shift-H, or if you go up to View and then it's in there. Okay. So the pin tool, if I were to click and I get my anchor point and I can draw out like that, right? The curvature tool, let's go ahead and make it have a black outline. Make it be nothing on the inside. Okay. The curvature tool, if you just click and then you go over to another spot and give it an anchor point, and then it just kind of goes. It's not, like the pin tool would still be solid to the left of that second anchor point, and I would only really be manipulating what's going on the other side. So this is kind of still being a little intuitive to what you're trying to do, all right? And it's still kind of moving and still kind of in flux, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. And you can also go back, just like you can in the pin tool, go back and click on the anchor point, or do you have to do Alt-click? I have one of the members of my live studio audience is helping me out with this because she has more experience with the curvature tool than I do. Double-click, thank you. All right, so this is still, I have all of this, it's very fluid on both sides. So if I go back and double-click, it's not working for me. We're going to start over. Okay. Interesting. Okay, so that's another thing that's different. That normally, if you were on the pin tool and you were to start drawing something and go back and click on the pin tool, it would give you a new line. All right, just now I was on the curvature tool and it stayed connected to that one even after when I clicked to the pin tool, it didn't forget it. It came when I went to the curvature tool, it kept going with it. All right, so that's another thing that is different about the curvature tool that I am still kind of learning about, just because I don't do as much with that. So let's go see in practicality how you could use something like this to create shapes or to trace something if we were doing something like that. So here's an image here. Now if I were going to do this in the pin tool, I would just click and let go, and then I would go like here, click and drag out, maybe to here, click and drag out, okay? And all of this makes sense to me. This is logic and speaks the language of Illustrator, and I can very quickly make a relatively close version of that, okay? I got a little messy over here on the side, sure. All right, if I was going to do the same thing using the curvature tool, though, because what I just did, a lot of people struggle with the pin tool, especially early on, because I've been doing the pin tool for a little while. Maybe you can't tell by the thing I just drew, but I've been doing pin tool for a while, but it makes sense to me, all right? The more you do it, the more you get used to it, the more you learn how you need to click and drag out, how big that handle needs to be, what the relationship is. Do I need to go back and click on the anchor point? All those different things to be able to get a straight line. All the things that we talked about with the pin tool, right? Curvature tool is a little bit more intuitive, but not if you don't speak the language. So I just clicked my anchor point there, and then I'm going to click another dot, and I'm kind of just following the line here, right? And so then when I come over here, I'm just clicking kind of where it makes sense, honestly. I'm going to go it's kind of too wide, maybe like that. And then, and like, see, in my mind, this doesn't make sense because, anyway, it's hard for me to explain why what I just did doesn't make sense, but it's almost hard to do. Oh, and so here's a great example where now I don't want this, the curve that is to the right. I don't know if you can see this very well. I need to, actually, I tell you what, I'm going to change the opacity on this. Let me just drop the opacity so you can see what I'm doing. Are you with me? I just dropped the opacity on my line. That's funny. Didn't mean to do that. Drop the opacity on my, there we go. So now you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. Okay. Nope. Everything is falling apart. There we go. Okay, so I just clicked off of it, changed the opacity, and now I'm back. I used the curvature tool, and I clicked on that anchor point to restart my line here. All right, so this is where I want it to curve in the other direction, and every time I turn like that, like where I would put that, it's going to be confused. It doesn't really, like the amount that it's doing, I don't know why I'm pointing at the screen here, the amount that it's doing down here is not what I want. And so that is where Live Studio Audience, you were saying I need to double click, right? Okay, so. So, say that again. I should have you on camera here. Go ahead. I got you. I got you. I see it. Okay. So what Live Studio Audience was saying, that's what I refer to all my students as, is just Live Studio Audience, so I don't use names here. So Live Studio Audience was telling me that with the pen tool, which this is true, you can't click anchor points with the pen tool and move it around, okay? However, with the curvature tool, and this is a nice feature, this is something I would actually use, I'll admit, all right, you're starting to convert me here, that you can click on the anchor point and you can move that anchor point as you are going. That is definitely something that you cannot do with the pen tool. All right. So and then if I double click on this, click, now I'm back to just having a straight line. So when I double clicked on the anchor point, it locked that previous section in place. So as I get this curve going up like this, I can do something like that. Okay. So let's compare our two things here as we drew it out. Neither one of them are exactly like the original, but if I wanted exactly like the original, I could have image traced it or spent more time on it. You know, I mean, I can go back. Both of these, and I'll move it over here so we can compare. All right, I will say that the curvature tool did give me a smoother line. Okay, now granted, I did the pen tool kind of fast, but this is about sometimes being fast is what you need, right? So, you know, this definitely has a little bit more of a wonky shape to it, especially right here. And like I said, I did this kind of fast. And in both of these, you can go back, just like we did in our previous lesson, and we can use our various conversion tools we can, you know, manipulate this. I can make this, I'm using my white anchor or my white direct select tool to make modifications and just kind of smooth that out. And maybe I can go back with my anchor point tool and get something a little bit better, a little bit smoother, or worse. It just does, you know, but the thing is, you're like, well, why would I spend time on that when I have this one over here? To be honest with you, there are times that you need, you know, certain tools, and tools are very similar to each other, okay? You know, the way that you would use a saw versus a reciprocating saw or a jigsaw or a bandsaw, right? All of those are basically the same concept, right? But then you would use them in different situations to get out of different problems, all right? So I'm not going to say that it is good to just use one exclusively. Playing around with it a little bit has kind of converted me a little bit, but I'm still, because when I learned how to do this, I only had the pen tool in my mind. That's why that's why I say the curvature tool is for cheaters. But, you know, I could see, looking at these two here, I could see where there might be a benefit, all right? So anyway, good idea to know both of them, and that's why we're doing this study where we're looking at all of the different toolbars, or as I like to call it now, ooh, what does this button do? So tune in next time where we'll be discussing, I guess, the type tool. We've already done a little bit on the type tool, but it might be good to do a full breakdown of all those different things.